In light of Omega recently releasing their Speedmaster Ultraman watch, I thought it'd be interesting to do a brief history of the original one. And you see it here pictured on the left-hand side. And to uninitiated, it's basically a run-of-the-mill Omega Speedmaster from the late 60s, early 70s, with a red-orange central chronograph hand. Now, the reason it got the Ultraman nickname was because it was featured in an episode of the Japanese children's show Return of Ultraman in the early 70s. And the screenshots on the right show you what collectors had to work with. So basically, only the central hand seemed to be different. And for the longest time, collectors debated if it was a Frankenstein, if it was a mock-up made just for the show, or if it was a factory original watch. No one could ever find any Omega documentation proving it, so people debated back and forth. And at least as of 2015, which is the last time I heard of it, that's where it stood. Apparently, since then, the Omega Museum got together with some collectors who took measurements of the central chronograph hand and found that it was in fact unique in its dimensions, and it didn't match up with other central chronograph hands used by Omega in the 70s, because again, many speculated that it was a Frankenstein hand taken from another watch, but apparently it was unique. And they also pinpointed some serial numbers that seemed to match with watches that came with this hand. More to the point, Omega after that claimed that it was a legitimate official designation and part of their canon, if you will. And again, from the perspective of a Speedmaster collector, especially the more moneyed ones in this day and age, anyway, are always looking for really obscure watches, and the Ultraman was particularly obscure because it was only featured in a children's show in the early 70s, and there was no other reference for it. So people who like to research it was really exciting. And of course, dealers who like to charge more money are also get very excited. So it's sort of a complicated mix. But basically, that's the history and how we got to the present. And here, on the right side, we have the recent re-edition of the Ultraman. And as I said in the prior slide, remember, the main distinguishing feature of the original Ultraman was the orange central chrono hand. And what they did with this new one, I guess they tried to color coordinate it better. They took this orange central chronograph and they gave it a black line. They put orange highlights throughout the thing to the point where it almost looks like a Halloween special more than anything else. And it's sort of funny from the purist collector's perspective. It really there's almost nothing to do with the original. I mean, these two are barely related. But the cynic in me suspects it was a limited edition release, an online release only, and I think a lot of people who pick them up are probably speculators, hoping that they can flip them like some of the other Snoopy ones. Again, this forced scarcity model is not something I'm a fan of, but I would understand that for a business, it makes sense, because if you can create an instant collectible, regardless of the reason why someone buys it, then it's good for your bottom line. But from the perspective, again, of a collector, I really don't see the sense in calling this new one an Ultraman and linking it to the old one, because they barely have anything in common. Anyway, that's my cynical take on this, and as usual, thanks for watching.